in fucking 2,000-year-old speak, the Bible is kind of trying to tell people how they should act. And yeah, clearly there's a lot of things in there that don't apply today.
But that's what I'm saying.
And there's some that do. But just because there's some that do, that doesn't mean that it's that the book thought of it first. The book just wrote it down first.
That's what I'm saying. This is what I don't understand about people asserting that the Judeo-Christian texts are where our values derive from. It's like, you understand that human beings wrote those texts, right? Morality far surpasses.
How did these people think that humanity, survived 20,000 years ago? When we didn't have these things.
I know.
It's still obvious that, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm sure there'll have been fucking outliers and, it would have been a much harsher time. I get that. But I think I'd be very surprised if you didn't go back 20,000 years and see people, not really trying to kill each other or whatever, and not trying to be violent towards each other, trying to work together, because that's what humanity is good at, working together. We're hardwired to not hurt each other, like most animals are, really. I mean, by and large, you don't see fucking packs of wolves tearing into each other and well, maybe occasionally lions, but they're never trying to like kill each other. They're trying to, make a point to tell the other ones fuck off usually. That's the sort of thing you see in nature, and I don't see why they think we are any different whatsoever.
No.
We've just found a way to write it down at one point. And then using our fucking massive intellect, we pontificate over what's been written for thousands of years, so we don't know what the fuck is going on.
Yeah, and I mean, our morals are curated by our experience, too. You know what I mean? That is what has curated our morals all along. It's different environmental constraints that we had to experience, and it's different consequences that made people think, hey, this is probably not good. Okay, just because there was, like, I said this in the video, just because there's some jackass in the desert who decided to write this shit down or fucking get, carve it on a, what do you call it when they put it on the tablet? Etch it, when they etch it into stone, I guess.
Yeah.
Just because someone wrote that shit down doesn't now mean that that ideology is the owner of those rules, right? Like, I read a part of Peterson's book that says, myth is dead. There's nothing to justify why we are still moral. Like, that entirely negates the idea of evolutionary psychology and just the nature of human beings. So yeah, what if myth is dead? So what?
That assumes that when human beings act morally, that there's some sort of fucking rational thought process going on in their head. The 99 times out of 100, when one person passes another person bleeding on the street, they stop to help.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't think about why, they just do, because there's a person there in trouble. That's what most people do. They just can't help it. There's no rational. I mean, I probably wouldn't.
And he mentions, like, in the paragraph that I read, he says, there is no reason for us to continue to follow, like, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not covet. I'm like, are you fucking serious? Do you think there would not be consequences if I went out in the world and started killing people right now?
You're sounding a lot like a vegan. A lot of the points that
you're bringing. Oh my god, get the fuck out of here, man! Like,
did you watch that Vegan Gains Brave New World stream?
I didn't. Maybe I will do that later.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, well, a lot of the points that you're touching on here, Jordan Peterson sounds like a vegan. Because they're the kinds of arguments that Vegan Gains was using.
But here's the thing. So I was listening to one of the more recent Waking Up podcasts, and you know what? Like, I'm getting a lot of shit for, oh, you're biased towards Sam Harris. Yeah, I'm biased towards what's correct, okay? And it doesn't take much thinking to get there. And Sam Harris had this guest on. I can't remember his name right now. But they were talking about veganism briefly. And they were talking about cults and followings and such. And the only real way to get people to convert to your ideology is by making it a moral issue, because you want them to feel guilty. You want them to feel bad about the choices they're making. And that is used as a mechanism of conversion. What do you think religion is? It makes you feel bad. It adds a negative connotation. It makes it all about morals to convert you to the cult that they want you to convert to.
Have you seen that guy you was talking to in the videos commented on your video?
Who?
You know the guy who came up to the car and he was asking about
Oh,
the gate
did he?
closing? Yeah, he's commented on the video. He's put, "Hey, I was the guy in the parking lot asking about the gate closing. Cool channel."
That's awesome. That guy was really cool.
Another Asian dude, apparently.
Yeah.
You have a lot of Asian dudes.
I mean, in Vancouver. Yeah, there's a lot of Asians in Vancouver. Vancouver and Richmond. Richmond is where Brian is from. I don't know. Honestly, I have a... Why am I echoing?
Am I echoing?
Yeah. Get some fucking headphones, mate.
Hang on. No, I don't know why it does this.
It's all right. I have a very hard time understanding why people... I mean, I found him very compelling too, but not for the same reasons, you know? Sure, I did find it interesting that he was distilling certain aspects of old mythology and blah, blah, blah. And I did like his psychological lectures too. But everything that he does now is overshadowed by the fact that he is anti-scientific. He puts so much emphasis on the subjective. And that's his fucking problem. And Sam Harris has never, ever once said that subjectivity is not important. But we can still view subjectivity through an objective lens because there are similarities across subjectivity, which is really just saying there are similarities across consciousness. Duh.
That's always one thing about Jordan Peterson from the fucking day one that's made me think there's something not right about this guy, because everybody says how astute he is when it comes to the things he says about human psychology. So clearly he's got a very fucking shrewd idea about how the human brain works. And then you hear him fucking spouting all this fucking religious crap. And it's like, you're doing this on purpose. You know what and how to convince people. I know you do, because, you know, I've heard what you have to say about psychology. You know what you're doing. Of course you do. And that's what I think is very insidious about it.
I think he does know. I think, like, no man is impervious of, like, the wealth, power, and status accumulation that men are sought after. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is just a male goal. It is a biological inclination to acquire those things. So he is not above that. And I think that despite the fact that he knows this, I mean, that is why he won't openly admit to what he is doing. Like, Sam Harris really did try to hone in on this idea. Like, you can interpret God however you want to. But what you're failing to understand is that you're playing a language game that the 99% of religious people on this planet are not. And you can't try and mash your idea of God and their idea of God together. Because what you're doing is you're taking the text and you're totally changing the meaning and adding symbology and your own subjective interpretation to it.
He's effectively writing his own fucking...
Fucking no shit. That's exactly the fucking problem, isn't it? And people think it's like so, oh my God, he's so intellectually and emotionally deep. You know what? You don't have the university credentials he does, so you can't criticize that. I can pick out bullshit very easily because it offends me when people try to insult my intelligence by asserting their subjective interpretation of reality and trying to say that it's objective, or trying to use that to say that objectivity cannot exist or is very difficult to pin down because everybody has an intermediary interpretive mechanism that is unique to themselves. Get the fuck out of here, Peterson. This is what science is for. Science is here so that the biases and the feelings and our intuitions, our personal intuitions about the world, can be ignored. Because the way the world works, actually works underneath it all, is not the way we intuit how the world works. And I just find it so obnoxious that he's like so exalted. He's put on a pedestal as some fucking intellectual giant. Why? Because all the people who are religious, they want to stay in that mindset because it is psychologically comfortable for them. And Peterson is providing them a mechanism by which to continue to perpetuate that comfort by adding all this metaphysical jargon and all this language and all these layers on top of something that is very cut and dry. And like, we know how it is. It's very uncomfortable to deal with things that are psychologically destabilizing. And he knows that too. He knows that. And that is what I find so fucking dishonest. And it's so greasy. And I can't respect that. How can you call someone a man of science or an intellectual if we can't even admit that there is a separation between the metaphysical world and the physical world? Okay, what happens in the metaphysical world does not necessarily play out in any tangible way in the physical world. If you want to tell stories about things and try to illustrate some kind of moral whatever to teach a lesson, that's one thing. Okay, but to say that it has anything to do with anything other than just a psychological analysis of these stories over time, it's a lie.
I was gonna say I don't like the entire way that's approached, because to me there's no metaphysical world. That isn't a thing.
I agree with that.
That's something that we each individually create for ourselves. It's not a real thing.
No.
It's a I don't even know how to describe what it is.
But that's the thing, like,
manifestation of our consciousness.
I just don't think that subjective aspect of consciousness can really be. We're having difficulty in science mapping subjectivity onto the world for a reason. We don't know why we have this thing called I or subjectivity. We don't know yet. That doesn't mean you have to invoke some elaborate story to try and say like, oh, these stories are going to tell us why we're here, or these stories have value, or whatever way he's trying to connect these things. I don't know. But I mean, like, he said something about, oh, consciousness is mysterious. Consciousness is a mystery. We don't know, man. It's really complicated. So fucking what? There are still things that we know about how consciousness functions, enough to make some deductions about it. Not all. But, I mean, that is what we're doing. Neuroscience is on the forefront of this. And I don't think people seem to understand that neuroscience and psychology are actually heavily linked. So people who are like, Sam Harris isn't a psychologist, okay? He's a fucking neuroscientist. Do you not think that there are neural correlates that are responsible for certain behaviors in human beings? Or do you really think that psychology is something separate?
What's the point? A neuroscientist knows what happens when a person has a certain, what physically happens in the brain when a person has a certain fucking problem. I mean, it's not difficult for a scientist to sort of work that backwards to see what actually sparked it off in reality. It might actually be useful. So of course someone like Sam Harris is very qualified to talk about something like that.
No kidding. And like, I don't think people can appreciate the fact that he is a philosopher. Like, philosophy gets a really bad rap, right? Because it is just considered to be some kind of pseudo-scientific enterprise. But philosophy is actually the means by which we find answers. We do try to look deeply into things by means of philosophy. And the fact that his philosophy has a neuroscientific edge, I don't think people can appreciate that unless they understand the two mechanisms that are at play that produce some of the answers he does about human behavior. And I think I can't stand the fact that people would rather buy into or would rather believe, I guess, that Peterson is doing something more revolutionary than Harris, and I don't think he is. I really don't think that he is.
I honestly can't even be bothered to look at the world in those terms. It's like there's people who's right and there's people who's wrong.
He's a fucking waffler, man. And like, yes,
Jordan Peterson is not a man I've ever seen answer a question in a way that sounds right to me, whereas Sam Harris is.
Oh my God, Kris, like I can't. This is gonna be on my mind for a few days because I'm so frustrated by the dishonesty of this guy. You know what I mean? And I'm so frustrated by just the pretentious displays of trying to look like he's doing something profound. So any person with a thinking brain who hears, do you agree that the worst possible suffering for all conscious creatures is bad? Anybody who has intellectual integrity will say, yes, that's bad. What does Peterson say? Well, what do you mean by bad? And I was like, this is fucking unbelievable. And people cheered at that. People clapped and cheered at that. Why? What was said there that was so amazing? Can we break this down? Because apparently this is a fucking problem for me to try and digest. I don't get it. I don't see the magical, mystical nature of what Jordan Peterson is trying to do here. I see nothing special at all.
No, but I mean, you've said it yourself. He's a fucking showman. He's a con man. He's a charlatan, and he manipulated people into having that kind of reaction to his what to you and me sounds like utter fucking nonsense. What do you mean by? Oh, we know what you're doing. It's boring.
What do you mean by bad?
Answer the fucking question.
Hey, Kris, my hand is hurting. It's on the stove. It's causing me suffering. Is that bad or...
Depends what you mean by bad.
Like, what?
See, that's the kind of answer I'd give to be an arsehole.
Exactly. Oh, man. I just can't. You know, I have all these, like... fuckboys in my comments, right, who were like, you're just not deep enough to understand Peterson. Deep enough? You do know that not everything that man says is deep? He tries to deepify it?
Well, he tries to make it sound deep. Whenever you actually fucking untangle what it was he just said, he hasn't actually said anything, which is quite a good trick, really.
Yeah, I know. That's what's amazing about it.
He uses a lot of words, but doesn't really say very much.
Exactly. So this is the difference in communication styles.
Sam Harris is efficient.
I was just going to say... Kris, you need to put on headphones for now or something. I keep echoing. Why? Why, Kris?
Oh, it'll probably echo if you talk while I'm talking, because my microphone's in pickup mode.
Oh, that makes so much sense. I'm sorry. Steamroller.
No, but I mean, I was just explaining the echo. I don't think I'm actually echoing.
No, you're not.
No, I'll tell you what, I have done that. I've turned up the speakers really quite loud, so...
Okay.
I'll turn you down a bit.
So, about this whole, like... Peterson uses a lot of words and says nothing. And Sam says very little, but he is actually explaining something quite complex a lot of the time. Like, I really think it's an underappreciated... I'm still hearing it. I'm still hearing the echo. You're not even talking now. Why is it doing that? Is it because it's loud?
I am moving shit
Some
around my
fucking headphones, mate.
Oh, shut up. Hang on.
The economy of language makes a huge difference. If you are trying to simplify something, if you really want people to understand the things you are trying to say, if you really give a shit to communicate effectively and communicate ideas in a way that will be able to sit with people and reach an audience in the broadest manner possible, you'd want to communicate more like Sam Harris. He doesn't need to say much. He's very skilled in taking very complex ideas and condensing them into their most basic form and putting them into a form that is digestible and very simple to understand.
I do agree with you, but there's a big but there. I don't really think the problem with Sam Harris, if there is any, is that no, to you and me, it sounds great, but to most people,
It's
they can't
boring.
sort of, yeah, it's boring. They can't hang on to anything that he's
No.
saying, and that's the problem with Sam Harris, because he doesn't have that sort of
that
charisma,
emotional,
if you like,
yeah.
that Jordan Peterson's got.
I know what you're saying, and
But
I dislike that.
To me and you, that charisma comes off as being immediately fake.
But that charisma, like Sam Harris's his passion and the way that he feels about issues, I feel like that really comes through in his words, and the tone and how calm he is. That doesn't really hit me as much as the things he's really saying, the meat of what he is saying.
Yeah. Well, the problem is you've actually most people don't act, and this is what Jordan Peterson takes advantage of. Most people don't actually listen to what people are saying.
Mm-hmm.
You was talking about the gestures and the timbre of his voice and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's what people are responding to, not really the words, because as you know, the words don't really fucking mean anything.
No, you can't say anything.
He's just using big, complex sentences to try and confuse the majority of people.
Yeah, it's like rap songs these days, you know? The videos are really well produced, the music is overproduced, but the words they're saying are fucking nothing. They're not saying anything. Nothing at all. That's what Jordan Peterson reminds me of. A really bad rap song from today. You know, sound and fury signifying nothing. And he's just such an arrogant cunt about it. And people think Sam Harris is arrogant when Sam Harris is trying to, like, really trying to get to the bottom of the issue. You know, really trying to figure out how they can have a conversation about truth that, like, in an arena they can both meet in. But Peterson refuses to do that. He is so fucking in the metaphysical world. He is in the subjective.
You saw that on his fucking Twitter thing where he was asking for questions to ask and ideas and stuff, because he went into the into the debate with a very, very combative attitude, and I don't think it really needed to be, because if he's right, all he has to do is explain his side, and then people either believe him or not. But that isn't what he does. He never does that.
Right.
He never really explains himself in any satisfactory way. And I've never read one of his books, but I'm assuming he does similar things in that.
So I got a lot of flack for saying that his book is pedantic. And the reason that I said that is because his writing is very similar to the manner in which he speaks. He's redundant. He's incredibly repetitive. Recognize that the reason advertising works so well is because of the redundance of the advertisement. You know what I'm saying? The more you repeat something, the more it will tend to stick in someone's brain. And I don't know if he was using that as a method of trying to help the reader remember what he's saying, or if he's really trying to just bore into your psychology and implant these ideas. But I just felt like a lot of especially the beginning of the book, so the way he explains it is he'll explain part A, then he'll go on to part B, and then it'll be part A and part B. And then when he starts C, it'll be, let me mull over A, B, and now we can come back to C. And it just continues like that. So it's a lot of redundancy. I find he's like that in his speech as well. And I understand that people think, oh, well, you know, these are really complex ideas that need to be fleshed out. No, they're really not that complex, okay? Someone was like, you know what? It took him 15 years to write that book. And I'm like, you know what? People have probably spent longer time writing books that were absolute failures and actually did not pass any kind of scrutiny because they were so ridiculous. Oh, but he's esoteric. He's different, you know? Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean that what he's saying makes sense.
I'll give him that, I suppose.
Yeah, sure, whatever.
He's definitely he seems very cult leader to me, but I think he's weak, and I think he'll probably just die.
I think he is
damage
too, and you know, like nothing. There's no integrity there. There's no intellectual honesty. If you can't admit the language game that you're playing, that you're being confronted about right now in front of Sam Harris because of what you just said, you can't even give a straight answer.
He does have the look of somebody that's been sustained by evil, though. You don't think?
I don't know. Like, yeah.
Look at our fucking old Prime Minister Tony Blair. He's got the same look.
Oh my God, let me tell you. So, when the show started, Peterson was leaned back in his chair, right? And Sam Harris was leaned back in his chair, relaxed, arms on the armrest, one leg up, the whole thing. Every time Peterson would speak, he felt the need to get on the edge of his seat and stare directly at Sam. Now, I understand that eye contact is a good thing, but it was like boring into your face eye contact. It was a little bit aggressive, right? Because I think men have a natural tendency to want to assert their dominance over each other, especially in a situation like that, right? It's a battle of the intellect, or whatever you want to call it. And there was a lot of that at play. Sam Harris also near the end was at the edge of his seat, just boring into Jordan Peterson and looking at him directly. And you really could sense the frustration in Sam. You really could. And it was very interesting to see, because usually we just hear Sam, or we don't see him in that kind of mode. And I imagine that I felt the same. I was having such a problem. I was such a rude asshole because I was getting so triggered by the way that he was behaving that I was kind of like saying things during the show, and the guy behind me had to be like, hey, excuse me, would you mind not talking during the show? I fucking steamrolled the show for like 5 minutes. I felt really bad, but I couldn't even help it. It was so frustrating. It's so frustrating because that is everything I don't want to be. Embellishing and trying to make things seem so much more meaningful than they are. He is a meanings dealer. Everybody needs meaning. So he's playing off of all these psychological tenets. All these things that we require as human beings to remain psychologically stable. He's really using that to his advantage. And I don't understand how it does make sense to people, because whether they know it or not, psychological stability is just something the brain does. It's something that the brain tries to maintain. That's why we're so good at telling ourselves stories of the gaps. God of the gaps. We fill in gaps of information that we do not have based on assumptions. It's very unscientific. It's a very subjective thing to do, and it's natural. We all do it. But the idea is not to encourage that kind of behavior. The idea is to engage with reality as much as possible so we can actually deal with any kinds of problems we do have, from a very tiny degree to a very large degree. And our inability to honestly engage with reality is what is causing us all of these problems, out in the world. Never mind for us individually or interpersonally or whatever.
Yeah, I think one thing that you've got to accept there really is that these people are going to do these things.
Mm-hmm.
There's not really an awful lot you can do about it.
No.
I mean, you're obviously not going to convince anybody in YouTube comments or anything.
Oh God, no,
I mean,
no.
All you can do is put your opinion out there and just.
Yeah. I know. I was getting a little bit frustrated over some of the comments because
one thing I was going to say is when you start a new job, do not talk to anybody about this. Anyone. Are you listening to me?
Yes, I will not do that when I start a new job, but I won't. But
especially round a
I'm gonna
scientists.
Yeah. I'm going to speaking of the comments anyway, I was looking at the comments and I was just flabbergasted by some of the things. Not that I should be surprised really, but just flabbergasted by the idea that people will erect arguments in places where I did not make them. There's so many things that I said. I even granted Peterson some things. Like, okay, sure, maybe it's interesting from a psychological perspective to acknowledge that, there are similarities across spans of time in our psychology through our evolution.
I agree with that. That is interesting if that's what you say you're doing.
Yeah, but it's not, is it? That's the thing.
Exactly.
Right. So that's exactly what Sam Harris was trying to get at with him. If this is the game that you're playing, then you should say that's the game you're playing. Because if it's not, what you're doing is lying.
I bet that had Jordan Peterson panicking internally. It's like, shit. Fuck. That's like the core of exactly what I'm doing. Bastard.
Oh, and like, I've never once... usually if people are bringing laptops to these things, both people have their laptops. You know what I mean? But like Sam Harris didn't bring a laptop. He didn't bring anything. And Peterson brought a laptop because he even said, not only did he say that, oh, there are specific things in the moral landscape that I would like to address. So I made notes and specific quotes, whatever. But there are also ideas of my own that I can't remember off the top of my head because they're too complex and sophisticated. So I need my laptop here for notes. What does that tell you about his thoughts and his ideas?
Well, it tells you that his thoughts and ideas are not his beliefs.
Right? And it also just tells me that, dude, it's just adding layers upon layers upon layers of jargon to something that cannot be completely figured out. You are approaching the idea of subjectivity from the wrong angle. That's what I think.
You effectively just admitted that these things that I want to tell you are not things that I think, the things that I've written down.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is it? I mean, I could write fucking anything down and then to say, but, we want to hear what he's thinking.
So it seems to me...
I don't think he understands that we
No.
want to hear what is going through his head.
Right.
Not what is written down an hour ago.
Right.
No one gives a fuck.
Right, so that's the other thing as well. If you have a properly formulated idea, or if you have thoughts worked out, or some kind of coherence regarding that idea, that coherence will be apparent in your explanation, and the merit of that coherence will be spoken if there is an actual consistency to what you're trying to tell us. I feel like what he does, now this is entirely assumption, but I feel like what he does, or in that instance what he did do, is that he came up with a thesis and then he tried to work backwards from it, and that's where that mental gymnastics process comes in. So if he doesn't, like, it's just, regardless, it's just not an accurate way of communicating.
Ironically, that is exactly what something like the Bible does. It sort of makes a thesis and then tries to convince everyone that this thesis is a thing that it's obvious, is divine.
Oh my God,
exactly
Kris, this guy tried to say that divinity is a complex subject. No, it's not. Maybe the psychological underpinnings of why we believe in divine ideas is complex, but divinity itself is not fucking complex. What is so complex? Exactly! I can't anymore with this shit. And like, my brain is going to be stuck in this place for a few days, and that's fine because I really do like thinking about it. I think that like, even though in my head I really didn't like him very much, this has really made me dislike him more. I really don't appreciate the dishonesty. And again, like, the thing that Sam said on his podcast when he was talking about this show is that there's great work that he is doing, sure, but there's an intellectual dishonesty with which he is approaching these metaphysical ideas and trying to kind of map them onto reality. It requires dishonesty and delusion and deception because, once again, Kris, guess what? Metaphysical realms are not real. They are entirely subjective.
I'm just going to say that.
Entirely subjective. And like, so he's trying to use this lingo, right? He says like, oh, Sam, how can you explain the intermediary interpretive mechanism that is required and that everybody has unique to themselves that helps them come to different conclusions about different things? That's why it's very difficult on your moral landscape to fucking distinguish what is an objective fact. And I'm like, everything you just said is the antithesis of science. And that you're taken seriously at all because of that, like that, it's so bothersome to me. Look, I get it, okay? We do have subjectivity. I enjoy my subjectivity. I'm sure we all do. It's a wonderful thing. But our subjectivity, if we really want to understand the world, it needs to be removed from the equation. It needs to be.
Yeah, which ironically is what science is for.
Right.
We're already quite good at that. In fact, I think we're better at science than we are at religion.
And yeah, and I also
1,000%.
right? And I also do believe that yeah, there is obviously something to subjectivity. Nobody is denying that. It is a phenomena that is one of the biggest mysteries of our existence. We want to figure out what consciousness is and why it is, and we don't know yet. Why might be a completely useful fucking thing to ask. We don't know. So what are scientists doing? There are neuroscientists who are researching the ways neurotransmitters function and how certain things in the brain operate, where functions are occurring in the brain, how those things are how those parts in the brain are interacting with each other, and the effects that are produced. They cannot translate that physical mechanism into what consciousness is yet. And that's a huge task because it's really fucking crazy when you start to consider the question of consciousness.
I think what's interesting, what will probably shut up a lot of these people is when, and it's going to be in our lifetimes, when they figure out how to make a machine do exactly what our brain does and act in the same way and react in the same way. It's just round the corner. And it's going to put a lot of this sort of metaphysical crap to rest because they're going to be able to demonstrate they can do exactly the same thing with a machine that our brain does.
You know, I really do understand people freaking out and saying like, well, you know, there's got to be something more, because feelings can be very strong. You and I both know that if you do any psychedelics or heavy drugs that really alter your consciousness, you do feel like you are communicating with another plane. If you do enough of it, you know what I mean? But why?
But it's important to recognize when you're not on the psychedelics that you're not.
No, but even when you are on the psychedelics, you are not communicating with another plane. You're not. It is just a modulation of neurotransmitters producing an effect. You're just fucking with your brain chemistry and you're revving it up. So what that should do is just show you that there is a potential to create certain brain states based on the modulation of the neurotransmitters that contribute to your feelings and behavior. There is nothing magical about that.
That's what I mean. Like I say, once they can simulate it, then it's not really. They're gonna. I think probably the next 50 to 100 years, they're gonna actually understand a lot more of these mechanisms that you're talking about and how that they actually go towards making a person, you know, act like they do. And once that's demystified, like I say, all these people like Jordan Peterson, they're going to just sort of fucking shrivel up and die away because, and I think that people in general, once it's understandable, once it's explained and controllable, I think maybe they'll chill out a bit more. Because I have to say, that's something that I've never, ever personally sort of experienced is the thought there must be something more. Like, no.
I just, you know what, I don't
know why there must be something more, because it seems to me probably in.
But here's the thing, right? People like to use this language, miracle, mystical, magical. Do you not think the very, like, our very existence is a miracle? Isn't it fucking amazing to you that it's little tiny cells all working together in our body? There's a fucking ecology and an economy of energy in there that is producing these meat sacks we live in. That's a fucking miracle.
It's very clever, I'll give you that, but I don't know if I don't know if it's a
No, but you know what I'm saying. If that's the language game that you want to play, let's play your language game and look at reality and see the ways in which, like, there are actual miracles that are very, like, the chances of this happening, we are lucky to experience. We are lucky to be the statistic.
Mate, you just have to watch a fucking natural history documentary to see all kinds of fucking amazing things. And you don't. I mean, and that's just on this planet, for fuck's sake. If you like look further out, like to what we understand already, it's just fucking incredible.
It's phenomenal. Why do we need to add other things on top of that? That's what
I was just gonna say. Why do we need anything else?
We don't. Amazing. But I just feel like that's like.
We're wasting our time.
People need magic, and there is magic all around you. And I'm sorry to use that terminology, but I'm playing your fucking language game. You Jordan Peterson fuckboys out there who are like, man, he's so much deeper. Actually, I would say he's shallow as fuck, all right? Because there's an exploitation happening there of your very basic psychological needs, and you don't even see that. You don't, okay? He doesn't need to be that exaggerated and perform like this. He doesn't need to do that. He's not stupid. He has studied dogma and mythology, and he's studied these, like, all these fucking fucked up totalitarian leaders. He knows what is compelling and charismatic and what really gets crowds together. Hitler did it! Was he amazing?
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was thinking about John Peterson last night, and the more I thought about it, the more that there was and I hate to compare somebody to Hitler, but that is kind of what he's like.
But it's the charlatan aspect of Hitler that we are particularly talking about here.
Well, yeah, and the way that he manipulates people into believing that he's got some sort of profound insight into something, and B, fucking like treating him, or I don't know, putting him personally on some sort of pedestal.
Can I tell you something? Like, people who really, really believe in their own bullshit really convince other people of their bullshit. I think you really, really have to believe in the shit that you're trying to sell people, at least in a convincing enough way that they see your belief and they also want to adapt it because they see the way it causes you to behave, and like this idea of a person that you're trying to project out because of the way that you see things. Okay? Like, this guy really thinks that he is sophisticated. He thinks that his interpretation of the stories is incredibly complex, sophisticated stuff, man. This is really sophisticated. That's why I've dedicated my life's work to it. Well, I think it's a fucking waste of time. His brain power could be used for something useful.
Well, I don't know. I think that ship has sailed, to be honest. But
yeah, I mean, he's on a path now. You know what I'm saying?
His brain power is irrevocably fucking committed to doing nothing very useful whatsoever.
And it's unfortunate. Because I think Sam actually saw potential in him too and said, you know what, I do think he's a smart guy. But I'm going to have to disagree with Sam. I mean, sure, you may have some technical training and you may be a great psychologist, but that is now overshadowed by your fundamental dishonesty. And
that doesn't mean he isn't smart. I do think that he is smart.
No, I know. I agree, but what I'm saying is it's overshadowed, and to me he just comes off as not very. Like, I just don't think what he's saying, actually, I should distinguish.
To me, being smart doesn't speak to your character one way or the other. You know,
I guess so, yeah.
Smart, nice people. And
listen, I'm just in a very uncharitable mood right this moment because I'm really fucking sick and tired of people trying to feed me bullshit and trying to come and defend this guy who is like some fucking grand wizard of the metaphysical world that people are propping up as some kind of fucking king.
Make sure our defined terms were the same. God knows we should at least agree on what words mean.
I think we do.
More or less.
But like I said, I'm very uncharitable towards him, and seeing him in person has really made me more uncharitable towards him. More uncharitable, and I just found that his conduct was very disrespectful. You know, why do you need to bring a laptop? If you can't remember things that are important for you to discuss, it doesn't need to be verbatim. It totally eliminates the idea of having a free-form discussion.
It does, really, because like I said before, we want to hear what's going on in his head. What's he thinking? That's the point of a of a discussion like that is to hear what the people think.
Mm-hmm.
And that isn't what Jordan Peterson wanted to do.
Mm-mm.
He wanted to have some sort of fucking, well, again, reminds me a bit of a vegan. He just wanted a debate. He wanted to, that's what he wanted, to pwn Sam Harris.
With nonsense, too.
Well, yeah. I mean, he is very good at it, let's be honest.
It was astonishing to me that Sam Harris, like, after Peterson asked, well, what do you mean by bad? Sam Harris could not even, like, he just leaned forward in his chair, his elbows were on his knees, and I was just like, wow. And he sighed audibly into the mic. And he had to think for a minute. Because that kind of dumb shit will break your fucking brain.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of designed to make stupid people, like, listen and pay attention, and make clever people get bored and go away. Because the clever people can see right through him, I guess. And Sam Harris obviously does see right through what he's doing.
He does. That's why he wanted to try and have a discussion about it. But Peterson is the master of diversion. Sam Harris it was very obvious, okay? He had that Jew eyebrow going, that engaged one raised eyebrow look that Sam Harris is so famous for. He was engaged. He was listening. I don't know how he did it. Someone fucking commented on my video and said, you know what? Jordan Peterson literally destroyed Sam Harris. Sorry, he destroyed Sam Harris in the literal first 10 minutes. And I'm like, what? Were we at the same discussion? And I'm very sorry, but applause and popularity does not mean that the person has a point. Okay? No. And during that discussion, Kris, he did make an appeal to popularity. And I think Sam had asked him something along the lines of, what do you think makes you right, or something like that. Something of that nature. I just can't quite remember. But Jordan Peterson's answer was very obnoxious, and it was like, well, why are there so many people that think like this and agree with me? Like, that is some kind of fucking point to leverage your fucking stupid ideas? A lot of people, that would be like me saying, you know what? Shut the fuck up, okay? I have like 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Trust me. I always make sense. Like, I think the caliber of your audience also matters. You know what I mean? And, like, let's be real. If Sam Harris was going to evaluate his ideas, do you think he would evaluate them with someone like me? Or someone who's smarter, much smarter than me and on his level? If he wants an actual legitimate criticism or commentary on his ideas, he's going to play within his grade. So that Jordan Peterson thinks that it is of value to mention his audience or his popularity or that so many people behave like him is ridiculous. It's just, okay, people have similar psychological structures in their mind, cognitive frameworks. Those are shared across certain lines, certain populations, whatever. It is not a surprise that you are going to find people who think they understand what you're saying and also agree with the way that you're trying to think. Especially if there's somebody who can't articulate themselves what they're trying to say. If they find someone who can approximately articulate what they're trying to say or think that they can approximately articulate it, guess what? You've got a new person in your camp who doesn't even fully understand what you're saying, but who is going to fall into your camp because they feel compelled and think that what you are saying is of use to them and will keep them psychologically stable in that framework.
About that guy, though, is that half the time it doesn't seem like he's really saying anything at all.
No, he's not.
Filling fucking airspace.
Kris, it's feels over reals. Metaphysics is nothing but feelings. It is the realm of feelings.
Like I said, he comes across more like a preacher than a fucking scientist to me.
Yes, very much so.
Or maybe a preacher who is a scientist, but whatever.
Yeah, apparently those exist.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's deceptive.
What a world we live in.
Yeah. It's not honest. It's not honest. It's very bullshitty. And if anybody thinks that his success is not dependent upon keeping some of these ideas alive and well and trying to convolute them and obfuscate them to the nth degree to ensure that he keeps a certain following, you're fucking retarded and you also don't understand human nature. Because he's explained this very thing himself as a matter of psychology. Men want to acquire power, wealth, and status. And when they get it, they do whatever they can to keep it. Guess what? Jordan Peterson is a man who has acquired wealth, power, and status. It is in his self-interest for himself, for his progeny, for the coming generations of children in his fucking family, for him to keep that wealth, power, and status and influence. This is not rocket science. This is very textbook psychology. And Peterson lectures about this. That is what the beauty of this all is. He talks about psychological stability. He constantly talks about we need to live in a world where the archetypal hero, which is yourself, is finding a balance between the realms of order and chaos, and always wants to be more within the order than the chaos. Chaos comes out of nowhere, and chaos is what causes you to fall out of your element, build character, blah, blah, blah. But what we're always trying to do, in Jordan Peterson terms, is stay within the realm of order and keep chaos at bay. People act like he is some kind of god and can separate himself from these very basic tenets of human psychology. He fucking can't. He's no exception to this rule, and the way he behaves is so clear. It's so fucking clear. Okay? And it's so amazing to me that people are like, oh yeah, he's fucking amazing. He's so deep. You just don't have the intellectual and emotional depth to understand somebody as brilliant as Peterson. I'm still sitting here waiting for an argument about why he is so brilliant. Why? Because he touched you emotionally and made you feel like you had a daddy? Because he makes you feel comfortable in your your current psychological condition? Your broken insides that are just held together by fucking delusions and lies and workarounds and mental gymnastics that are going to prevent you from actually being a fluid thinker that can adapt to the environment in a way that is conducive to not only you, but to society in general? Yeah, hey guys, let's find reasons to continue to shackle ourselves to age-old traditions and age-old texts, because that makes sense, right? Like 2,000 years ago, those things are still relevant, right? I mean, our lives are like so similar. Oh my God. Yeah, I may sound like a Valley Girl idiot, but I'm not that much of a fucking idiot that I'm gonna buy into that fucking bullshit. And how people don't find that insulting to their intelligence, I don't get it. Do people not care about integrity anymore? Do people not care to honestly state your motives? I mean, go ahead.
I think it's fair to say that it isn't like that. I wouldn't have said do people not care about integrity anymore. I'd just said no, they don't care about integrity, and they never really have. To be honest. I don't get it's something that most people aspire to, but no, when it comes down to it, if somebody tells them a story that touches them in their happy place, then they'll fucking throw integrity out the window and just fucking follow the leader. Mm-hmm. That's what people do. That's what they act like. Mm-hmm. Obviously not all, but I mean definitely more than half. Which I think is represented by the dislikes on your YouTube video.
Oh yeah, it's all fanboys. It's all these people who think they have a point and think that Peterson...
What is surprising though is the amount of likes.
I haven't even looked, to be honest with you.
Well,
I just wanted to get it out there. I know I'm going to be thinking about it for the next few days because, I'm actually kind of glad I wasn't able to pull out my phone because I was not distracted at all during that whole thing.
No, you definitely seem to have very good recall about what happened.
Yeah, because I was really focused. I was really watching those two. I was really trying to listen. I was really trying to actually be open to anything that Peterson did present, because the idea of the conversation was to bridge the gap so that they could both discuss truth in a manner that served everybody, or if they could clear up some of the confusion from the podcast, from that conversation they had. You know, it could have been such a fruitful conversation. But once again, we got caught up in jargon and fucking meandering explanations and irrelevant tangents from Jordan Peterson's side. I mean, that's not just because I dislike him. That is how he conducted himself throughout that conversation. If you listen to any of his interviews now, if you listen to his podcast with Sam, you will find the same pattern of behaviors. And I just find it's so, I don't know, it's very frustrating to me. It's very frustrating. Like, people want to give me shit, right? And they're like, oh, you blindly follow Sam Harris. You just want to have his babies. It's like, no, like there's actual real substance to this man. And all the dick sucking aside, I really do think he's an underappreciated intellectual in our lives. And the fact that people think Jordan Peterson is the next Hitchens, that people have said stupid shit like that and think that he's going to be the savior of the West by continuing to inject these bullshit stories and this mythological structure, I just think is not good for anybody in the long run. Okay? Like, Dan asked me yesterday, he's like, so do you think that it's better to be someone who's a Jordan Peterson supporter than to be someone who's staunchly religious? Because obviously there's progress of some kind. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Okay, I'll grant you that. But it's still long-term not the best way to go about this problem. This problem of believing things for which we have no evidence.
I agree. It's very much a Band-Aid solution, isn't it? It's like, what, you know, aren't we old enough now? Can't we actually figure this out?
It's instant gratification, Chris.
Yeah,
it's a mechanism of instant gratification. And you know what? It may be great right now, but in the long term, it's not. It's not. And that's kind of what forward thinking means. You know, we have to make decisions and try and correct our thinking about things so that we make better decisions in the long term. That's if we care about the species, or if we actually care about progress. And if we care to be able to be around people who are also honest and want to deal with reality, as Sam Harris said so many times, engage with reality in the most honest way possible. And I think you're right. I don't think people really do want to, because I think life is very bleak and there's going to be a lot of answers that we don't get. And that makes people uncomfortable. And people will always be able to get popular and make money off of the fact that they purport to have answers that they don't have, because it satisfies a psychological need within us to be stable. To not be thrown into chaos, to not have to consider the things that we think are real that are not, and have no relation to reality whatsoever. And it sucks. It's gay.
Yeah, I can honestly say I don't think I've ever heard Jordan Peterson say anything even remotely compared.
Oh my God, Chris, so many times the guy next to me would clap, and I just found it so hard not to be like, gay. I wanted to so bad. So Jordan Peterson went on this like 10-minute tangent about what his idea of God is. And right after that, I wanted to do it. But I was like, oh, don't. Just don't. It was really hard, though. It was really hard. All my ape-like impulses were definitely surfacing that day. I was really wanting to be just an utter asshole.
They should have sat people in sides, really, shouldn't they? Like have a Jordan Peterson side and Sam Harris side.
Yeah, that would have been cool, I think. Oh my God, it was so funny. There was one point where Jordan Peterson had answered a question and his side of the crowd cheered. And Sam Harris looked out into the crowd and he goes, all right, well, great. Now I have to figure out where in that you thought he had a point. It was fantastic. You know, he actually said directly to Peterson that he's like, you know, you kind of remind me of Deepak Chopra. You just don't have the rhinestone glasses, which I guess is a plus in some way. It was really funny. And I'm like, he really is. He really fucking is Deepak Chopra. He really wants there to be some kind of metaphysical answer to the existence of subjectivity and consciousness. And I just don't understand. Like, I know I keep laboring this point over and over, but I just don't get how us telling stories and narratives has anything to do with, like, consciousness being a thing. I think that is just a product of consciousness and subjectivity. So I don't know what he is trying to get at. Oh, there's value to these mythologies and stories. Okay, is there value in 2018 to one of those giant boom boxes that people carried out in the streets to listen to music? I mean, it may provide some sort of novelty for the person who wants that sort of thing, but I got a fucking iPod now. Because that technology is antiquated.
Fuck, we don't even use iPods anymore.
No, we just our phone. Which is technically an iPod for me, I guess, too, right? It's my iPhone. But it's just super weird. Like, why don't you just admit that there is some form of novelty that you get out of reading these stories? If you spent 15 years doing something, there's obviously some factor of novelty in there. And that's fine. If that's what you like, that's what you like, and that's cool.
See, I keep going back to something he said that Sam Harris said, and I don't understand why Peterson just doesn't say what he's doing. I think people would still be very receptive to it if they knew that it was, you're just doing it because you like it. And that's fine. It's an
I don't know. I think people may
kind of phenomena.
People may see him.
I don't get why doesn't he just.
I don't know. People may see him as a liar at this point if he does openly admit to that.
Yeah, I understand. I more meant why didn't he just do that from the get go?
I have no idea. Well, I mean, come on, Kris. Do you think it would have been as lucrative if he did?
Probably not. No.
Exactly.
That's what I mean. It must all be, financial. I don't think that he's any more complicated than that. He's just found a formula for making money, which we'd all like to do, wouldn't we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, I don't think there's any shame in that. I don't think there's any shame in that, making money, but there certainly is if you're trying to make money and exploit a certain group of people, and then they find out you're lying.
Making money is fine,
yeah.
But making money and as you said, exploiting people and I don't know, manipulating people. That's just, I don't know. It's just really skeevy.
Hey man, the richest religious leaders made money this way. Fooling fools is a very lucrative business.
Well, quite, yeah, and that brings me back again to that's what Jordan Peterson reminds me of. Mm-hmm. Like a religious leader, a cult leader, if you like.
So, like, one of the comments that stuck out to me was like, why don't you fucking keep talking about his body language, dumbass? Haven't you seen other speakers? They generally use gestures and shit. And I'm like, it's one thing to use gestures when it's necessary. You know what I mean? Like when you see someone talk about something and you're listening to the words that they're saying, I think it's pretty obvious to find a bit of a disconnect between the way that he's trying to present the information he's presenting and the hand gestures and the overt emotional expression that is used while he's trying to hash out his ideas. I just think it's out of proportion and it doesn't feel natural to me. It feels like a performance. It looks like a performance. And, in ways that we don't control, we do actually, like, I understand that this is how he behaves and stuff, but I think he's just so used to being so hyped up and so hyper about his ideas. Like, if you've seen any of his lectures, he gets very into it. He's very impassioned, and that's cool, okay? But we kind of need to maintain a certain decorum when there's an actual serious discussion that we're trying to have about something that does manifest in the real world, something that you are actually really making confusing due to the way you're trying to explain the idea. Yeah, I just have a problem with him. I really do. I think it really speaks to one of my fundamental values that I feel he is antithetical to, which is, being straightforward. And and honest. And like, I think intellectual honesty is really important. And
intellectual honesty. I just think he's dishonest generally.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't. I mean, we could both be completely off base, but I very much doubt that we are.
I don't think I am, and I don't even feel bad for saying that. I think he's wrong. Come at me. Come at me. I think he's wrong. I think he's going about this all wrong.
Whatever it is that he's going about.
Yes, exactly. You know, and
he just so reminds me of a cult leader, and his fucking Patreon numbers remind me of a cult as well. I don't know why. Just it's over ridiculous amounts of money.
And again, good for you. Make that money, but just don't purport yourself to be some kind of fucking conduit of the mystical and unknown and the magical. Oh my God, this amazing analogy that Sam Harris used. I know I talked about it in the video, but like, so Peterson straight up said to Harris, well, you act as if God exists. You implicitly believe in God, whether you admit to it or not. Do you believe in this? Do you believe in this? Well, then you believe in God. Right? And Sam Harris is, oh my God, you know him with his analogies. It was brilliant. He's like, all right, so this would be like if you asked me, do you believe in ghosts? Of course, I would respond, no, I do not believe in ghosts. Do you have a relationship to things unseen? And Sam replies, well, I suppose I do have a relationship to some degree with things unseen. So then you believe in ghosts. Basically, he's trying to illustrate that you can work around any issue if you're going to arbitrarily assign concepts to things that we already have a conceptual framework for.
Word game. It's redefining words, like on the fly.
Like a postmodernist, right? Oh, but Jordan Peterson is against relativism, and Jordan Peterson is against postmodernists, yet he is a fucking postmodernist, and he puts in place the justifications for relativism. He talked about this intermediary interpretive mechanism that is unique to everybody. So fucking what? The point is to work past those things so we can get a clearer picture of reality. Why do you need to continue to assert that people can interpret? There's an infinite set of possibilities and interpretations. So fucking what? Does that mean they're all correct? Clearly not. So that is a non sequitur, Mr. Peterson. It's a non-fucking sequitur. It's woo-woo, all right? Stop trying to feed me your bullshit. Just stop already.
Lots of words doesn't say very much.
Not at all. Oh, everybody interprets things differently. And no shit, Sherlock. Why do you think there's fucking wars and dumb shit in the world? Do you think it's because everybody thinks the same? Of course not. Of course not. Oh, I think moral relativism is the worst thing. But intermediary fucking interpretive mechanisms. Oh my God. Okay, yeah, we know this shit. You are not saying anything new. You're just using big fucking words. You're using florid language to make it seem like it's something new. These are not new ideas. Nothing about anything he says is new.
Well, no. I mean, virtually nothing that he says is fucking real.
No, exactly.
And in fact, most of the words that he says don't really need to be there at all.
Nope.
Pretty sure you could condense most Jordan Peterson lectures down to about 5 minutes if you just got to the...
Have you seen that, like, Jordan Peterson phrase compositor or whatever?
No.
It's like a random phrase thing. They made one for Deepak Chopra ages ago that just puts like random words together with like metaphysical jargon. There's another one of Jordan Peterson's that does the exact same thing, and it's actually quite funny that just a randomizer of the words he uses quite often really does make a statement that is plausible to be Jordan Peterson. It's really fucking funny.
Is it Wisdom of Peterson?
That's the one. Go put one in and tell me what it says.
What do you actually?
I think you just click the generate button, right?
Well, it gives you one straight off the bat. Orderliness inspires your own balance. Don't get me wrong, science is inside descriptions of neural networks.
Don't get me wrong, bucko.
The presupposition arises and subsides in the mechanics of brains.
Oh my god.
I like the animated GIF that's above it as well of him just spewing fucking
Yeah.
legs and legs out of his mouth. You see, this actually is quite good because at least there's other people out there who've noticed this, and I think that shines through in the comments of your video as well. There's, I would say, an equal amount, sort of good and bad comments, really.
And what does it say about, like, I know people are like, oh, you're not fucking as erudite or intelligent as Peterson, and you shouldn't be critiquing him or criticizing him. And it's like, what does it say to you that someone of a low intellect like myself can see right through the bullshit? What does that say to you? Shouldn't that indicate to you that the guy is not as fantastic as everybody is propping him up to be?
Well, that only works if they know it's bullshit as well, and they don't. They think the opposite, so they think you're just stupid.
Right.
And there's nothing really you can do about that. You can't convince those people, or you. I mean, maybe you could, but most of the time you cannot.
I don't care to, Kris.
No, it's just not really worth having the conversation.
No.
It's like, I've never had really anything very much to do with religion myself, sort of psychologically. So I don't care. I've long since come to terms with all of the fucking angst that he's fucking expressing with regards to his sort of religious fervor. It just doesn't affect me. It's like, it just seems like a really, really weird thing to be talking about or bringing up as new in 2018.
And it's his confusion. His confusion attracts other confused people. Fundamentally confused.
I don't really understand why he's confused. You'd think if anybody would know.
I think he's having a really difficult time reconciling what he deeply believes and what is true. Why do you think he has such a difficult time defining truth? Why do you think he needs to go to this metaphysical shit every time we talk about truth or every time truth is discussed? And he's convinced other people who are confused that he has some kind of deep insight into this issue. And it's not. It's not deep. It's not. I want to live in a world where our ideas and our discussions are motivated by scientific discovery and the application of science, and just looking at things, as bleak as they may be, with the use of the scientific method and being honest about it. And he doesn't want to do that. And like, you notice he's very emotional, right? I think he is more governed by his emotions than your average scientist would be. I think being a psychologist really fucks you up. I think it makes you think that the emotions are far more important than they are. And that's not to say they aren't important. They are. Emotion and cognition are two sides of the same coin. They're both necessary to make a functioning nervous system. But the amount of emphasis that we put on our emotions and our feelings, trying to prop them up as something magical because we feel them very strongly at certain points, or we feel very strongly about certain things, I just think it's irresponsible, and it's not necessary. It's not necessary to appreciate what feelings are like, you know? It's not necessary to appreciate how great love feels or how amazing it is that you can feel a certain feeling at all. It's amazing that the brain does that.
Yeah, again, we come back to, I don't really see what there is to... I don't think we're losing anything by understanding how, if we understood how everything worked, there's still plenty of wonder to be had in that
Chris,
that it
it's
does
just a
work.
wonder it does fucking work.
Yeah, but that might just be me. Oh, it might just be
Well, it's
us.
both of us for
Because,
sure.
well, I think but most people don't see it like that. They need to, they don't, for some reason, they don't find appreciation in the sort of the world as it is, and they need to have something else. That's probably, well, I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know why that would be. I don't know why people are like that, but I can only assume that it's like some sort of
I feel
relic
like
of some sort of
it is a
survival
relic.
mechanism.
That's a great
That's
word, and I think it's the relic of wanting to believe that we as human beings have access to realms and other places that other things in this plane do not.
I think what it probably boils down to is it became sort of evolutionarily advantageous for us to have some sort of driving force in our lives that pushed us forward, and that religion is just the sort of real world manifestation of that psychological action.
Yeah.
That's what I think probably happened. So it was at one point, Jordan Peterson is correct. At one point, a very fucking long time ago, it was advantageous to people who otherwise had pretty fucking shit lives, really, to believe in something more. So it pushed them on to do more with themselves, and that probably was helpful in pushing people along the path to civilization. But we're way past that now. We need to start talking about these things for what they are, or certainly what they appear to be, which to me is just a survival mechanism that's still lying around that we don't need anymore.
I think it's DeLorean time, and people need to travel to 2018.
Yeah. Well, yeah. People are still stuck thousands of years ago, though.
Yeah, this is just indicative to me of the fact that, like,
but the thing is, they don't think they are. That's what's really frustrating.
yeah,
They don't
it's
think
crazy.
because they've got a smartphone and a car and a house and all this stuff, but they don't realize that they're still acting exactly like a person did 2,000 years ago. It's fucking dumb.
It is, but I also do think that, like, the echoes of savages are still in our genome. You know what I mean? Like, we haven't gotten very far from that point, but it's just weird because the access to information at this point in our evolution is unprecedented. It's also, it just seems very obvious that if there's no evidence for it, you shouldn't believe in it, regardless of what the concept is.
I'll tell you what I really like about human beings is that they've completely broken and fucked off evolution. It's like, yeah, evolution's real, but the problem with it is it's too slow. So we're going to do our own thing, and we've destroyed what evolution could do. There's no way evolution in 2,000 years could build this kind of civilization, is there?
I don't know.
Well, it's just not possible.
You mean where we're at now could not be built in 2,000 years?
Oh, well, no, not by biological evolution.
Oh, no. It takes a long time.
Like millions of years, maybe, but yeah, we've completely fucked it off and we've accelerated the process. But we've become so fucking used to how fast we've made the process that it's not fast enough for us now. We can actually see the end goal, but it's still really thousands of years away. We're just all done. I'm sure human beings will do great things, but they need to fucking grow up quickly.
Yeah. And, like, Harris says this a lot too. And I don't mean to say a lot of things that he says, because I actually do agree with him quite a bit. I can't help that. The guy makes a lot of sense, so whatever. He says, we don't have a lot of time to correct these problems that are leading us towards destruction and that are taking us away from the goal of being able to cooperate and create a viable global civilization. Like, a lot of people want to shit talk globalization and all this kind of stuff, but why would you not want countries to cooperate and work together? Because regardless of how you feel about certain people or countries or races or whatever, we all have one planet to live on. So whatever we can do collectively to improve that experience for ourselves, we should work towards that as a goal. That is maximizing human well-being for everybody on a large scale.
That's why Donald Trump baffles me so much.
Well, he's an idiot, Kris.
With his trade wars. Jesus
he's
Christ.
we can't Trump right now. I'm just trying to tackle one retard at a time, okay? Just one, please. Peterson gives me a headache. Just one. One at a time.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure somebody had said something to me on Twitter about how Peterson said he would have voted for Trump. And I was like, okay, well, that gives me more of a reason to dismiss him if that is true. Yeah. You know. So they're going to be in London in the next week or so, I think. Him, Peterson, and Murray, Douglas Murray, and...
oh, wow. Lucky London.
Yeah, it's going to be good. I wish Jamie could have gone. Checked it out. It was
expensive.
Yeah, it was expensive.
Do you know how much?
Probably around the same price, right? Like 120 quid? 90 quid?
I don't know.
I don't know, mate.
In London? I don't know. That seems cheap.
Maybe. I'm not sure, Kris. I am pretty stupid, so...
I don't know. You might be right. I don't know. Like I say, I don't go to London, but everything's really expensive there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to them coming back next year. I'm surprised they booked a show with him so early in advance. March 17th, 2019. I will be there.
It's them two coming back again.
I think it was actually, it said something about a conference, and those two are going to be there. I don't know who else is going to be there, but those two are confirmed guests or confirmed speakers. I think it's going to be more of a walk around and you get to actually talk to them if you have tickets kind of thing. So more details will come out later, but that was my understanding. And I can't fully remember that part because I was just too busy fuming about the conversation that I'm still blowing off steam about. So
yeah. I do hope they release the audio at some point.
I think Pangburn might release the actual video because they produced the event and they were filming. So
no, were they? Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I am not sure if Sam Harris is actually going to release the audio. I know he did say that he's going to stop releasing audio from any of his live events because he just doesn't like the quality of the audio and it just doesn't have the same effect as actually being there live and takes away from the discussion. People voted on that. So he said he is going to make audio available to the supporters, but I'm not sure about these particular events that are run by Pangburn because I think he might need to buy the rights to that footage. So I don't know if that's something he will go through the labor of doing. I'm not entirely certain. That's just my assumption, to be clear.
If they do release it, how long do you think that would be?
I don't know, probably a month.
All right.
They're probably going to do some editing, you know what I mean? Like, it's not going to just be the raw footage. Maybe they will, I don't know. I haven't checked their website. I don't really know, but yeah. Good event, though. It was a really good event. That theater, the Orpheum Theater in Vancouver, it's really nice.
Definitely sounds like you got your money's worth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it looked like a nice place in your video.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful. It was great to be there. It was great to be in the presence of those people. Even though I didn't like him. It's good to be around people you don't like too, because it's a challenge learning how to manage your own emotions. I was totally behaving like a fucking idiot. Like, sure, it was contained to my seat, and it wasn't like I was being obnoxiously loud, right? But like I could sense it in myself, just the ape-like impulses of shouting stupid shit or just doing something like that. It was so strong in me because I just react very poorly to bullshit of that kind, like very obvious bullshit. You know, some bullshit's subtle, and it takes a little bit of exploring to find, but this is just all in your face, and I was just having a really hard time, and I was feeling the frustration that Sam had too, and that was actually making me even more emotional and retarded in my brain, so I really had to regulate.
Did Brian have to keep punching you in the arm?
No, he was fine. Every time Peterson said God, though, I turned to Brian and I said, God! And he would just laugh. I did it like 4 times and then I stopped. I got pretty into the discussion, so finally I did calm down. And I'm glad that guy behind me was like, hey, yo, can you please be quiet a little bit? Like, want to watch this kind of thing. And I was like, yeah, I'm really sorry. Because honestly, until that point, I was totally in a mode where nothing else was around me and all I could hear was what was happening and all I could see was what was happening. I just honed in so much. It was very stupid. So, yeah, no, it was nice. He was very polite too. He wasn't like, hey, shut the fuck up. He was just like, hey, man, like, I really want to watch the show. Would you mind not talking during this? And I was like, yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Well, you were very into it. I was going to say, it sounds like very good value for money.
It is. It is. It's, it adds a whole other dynamic when you actually see these people talk to each other in person.
It does make you wonder that. Why, for obviously not that much money, but for, you know, still a decent amount of cash, they don't do like debates like that online, like say $30 a viewer or $40 a viewer, something like that. You have to pay with a credit card to get in and then just watch like a live stream.
I think it takes away from the intimacy of it. There is actually
no. I understand.
Oh, you mean on top of the actual?
Yeah, not instead of. Yeah.
But the thing is, Sam Harris was doing that. He was doing that when he was using his own organizers for the event. But Pang Burn Philosophy, I think they're a fairly new organization, so I don't know what really is going on with them. But it could just be because they're new. It could be because they don't want to. It does make sense, but I'm not entirely sure. I have to admit ignorance on that matter. I am not sure, Mr. Yolksheh.
I'm still very jealous.
You should be.
I wish I could have seen it.
I wish I could have taken you with me. It would have been nice. I can't believe that guy commented on my video, the guy who talked to us in the car. How did he fucking find me? Like, that's so weird.
Well, the way that all these other people are finding you, they want to, you know, they want to be able to hear what was said as well, or they were there and they heard what was said and they're searching YouTube for it. And there weren't many people there, and there were even less people there who made a YouTube video about it. So it's not surprising, really.
I got home. I was incredibly baked because Brian and I smoked quite a lot after. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do a quick summary of how I felt about this thing. Talk about it a little bit. I'm going to sleep on it, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to do a more thorough analysis and explanation of what I said, because I totally sounded like a retard in the first one. It was like so high, and I think I was chewing gum like a retard too. So I think if I've learned anything in the last few days, it's that I need to cut gum out of my life. I think that's what I'm going to do. Because, oh my God, it's just so gross. The way I chew gum, I can't even help it. I don't know why I chew it like that. It's just such an awful, disgusting habit. And I don't want to do it. Unless I'm doing it purposely to be obnoxious. But I actually do prefer eating an apple instead. Because there's something about that that's like... you know.
Yeah, chewing gum is a bit pointless.
Well,
and it's not
just
very good for your teeth if you do it all the time.
No, it's just not attractive when you're trying to talk and you hear
Oh no.
either. It's gross. And it looks gross. Like I watched that video of Brian and I, I'm like, ugh, look at that fucking gum in my mouth. It's like I'm like a teenage girl who pops bubbles. Like a fucking degenerate. Don't need to do that.
You just constantly need something in your mouth, don't you?
It is an oral fixation thing for sure. It is. But whatever. Well, it's all good, mate.
There'll be less chance to do that when you're at work, I suppose. Or it's easier to change bad habits when you're changing your routine entirely.
Yes, I think that is very true. I think I'm going to... I won't. I think what I'm going to do is start getting ready to work out. Ta-da!
Yeah, you're off to the gym.